All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe, that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice we can see the Giants, the Padres, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here, at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it, if we're thinking here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much, because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here, and we will have these guys. Oh man, that's all right. It's gonna get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here. Now that leg is here. Now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist, back out to the front foot, boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down, it's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw, body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around, giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, so we got your video here from the side view. We're not going to worry about the front view because I just want us to make this as simple as possible and just stick to one side. Because the two things that we're going to want to focus on deal with our arms path, our throwing arms path, from the time our hands separate from one another to the time that our front foot hits the ground. So starting now, I know we can't see it, but your throwing hand is no longer in your glove. To this point right now. So this path that your throwing arm is taking to get to here, we want to think about if our arm is going to be short and compact, meaning the hand does not fall all the way down out of the glove, and instead we maintain a bend in our elbow that gradually gets deeper and deeper, or more towards 90 degrees, we have to make sure that we buy time. Because right now, your arm is in that 90-90 position that we talked about with the big leaguers. But we talked about that position of that throwing arm being when this front foot hits the ground. Because your arm's path is so compact and short, it gets to its end destination, this position here, quickly. Quickly is in relation to when that front foot hits the ground. Your front foot has not hit the ground yet, so your arm being in the throwing position is early because we don't throw the ball until after the front foot hits the ground. So because this arm has gotten to this throwing position early, it's going to struggle to stay in this position while we wait for this front foot to get in the ground. And what we're going to notice instead is that the elbow is going to start to rotate forward, which will then lay the throwing arm back into external rotation. So as that front foot's getting into the ground, elbow's rotating forward, hand is laying back, creating the shoulder going into external rotation. So now that this front foot's in the ground, this is now the time that we want to be throwing. This is the time that we want to see that arm in that 90-90 position with our front shoulder, even with our back shoulder. And we can see your back shoulder's here, and your front shoulder is over this way. We need it to be going towards the target. And the reason that that front shoulder is going over there is because the back shoulder, back elbow is coming forward early. And again, early is according to this front foot. So if we were able to have, excuse me, front shoulder, back elbow in this nice straight line like we have here, and then we have that throwing hand above there, we have our 90-degree angle here. Here's your side of your body. We have our 90-degree angle in our armpit. But again, this front foot's not in the ground yet. So if we were able to hold this position as that front foot hit the ground, we would be fine. But as we see, we don't hold that position. The shoulders begin to rotate, and now we're in this type of position. So guys like you that have a compact arm swing here, that swing of the arm to load up, if it's going to be compact with your arm, we got to make sure that we get it deep into our back. We got to feel this elbow going back more towards this wall so that your shoulder blade pinches to the center of your spine. So that way the hand is not on first base side of your head, but it would be on third base side of your head. So we're going to really want to work on how your hand separates from your glove and how it swings into its loaded up position. Because right now you're throwing the baseball before your hands ever get loaded. It'd be like trying to hit with your weight all on your front foot pretty much, and your hands just right in front of your chin. Yeah, you're going to be able to make contact, but you're never going to hit the ball hard. You're never going to get any doubles, right? We need to be striding towards that target as we load those hands back and then release all that tension. That's the same thing here. We're not creating any tension in our body when we're making this throw. We're kind of just stepping out there and then just pushing this baseball. And we can see because of that, we notice the trajectory of this throw. Because everything was coming through early with the shoulders, we don't have the ability to keep that ball in our hand enough to be releasing it out here, getting it to travel down as it goes. What we'll notice instead, because the shoulders began to rotate early and the throwing arm did not get loaded back and up on time, as we go to throw this baseball, here it is, here it is, Here it is. It's out of your hand, and it's traveling literally up, 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 and up. And we're already up 1 whole foot on this mound. This ball needs to be coming out of your hand more right here, and then going here, and going here, and then the ball is starting to taper off like that. So you see, this pitch is never going to get in the strike zone, and if it does, the lollipop, super, super, super slow throw that lobbed in there. And all of that is being caused because the arm isn't quite loading up the way we want it to when we want it to. So we let that run one more time for you. All right. And then the second thing that we want to address is at this moment of this front foot getting into the ground, we want to think about this front leg turning into a firm flagpole. So that way we can rotate around it with both our back shoulder and that back arm, so our throwing shoulder and our throwing arm, being able to rotate around that flagpole, but more importantly, the back hip, the back knee, and the back foot being able to use this front leg to rotate around. And what we'll notice is that when you go to throw, after the ball comes out of your hands for your throw, how that back hip, back knee, and back foot, instead of rotating around, they all just kind of go straight forward. And then we're kind of just like walking down the mound to the catcher. We want to be putting this down, and then now all of this continuing to rotate down and around. Then all of this popping up and coming up and around to finish, like we noticed in those big league examples earlier when we were drawing the lines on their legs. The being able to rotate around through your finish is going to become very much easier to do once we find ourselves in a better throwing position. Once you're here, there's not a whole lot of rotation we get to do to make this throw. And because there's not a lot of rotation we get to do to make this throw, it's hard to really get the back leg to want to continue to rotate through. So everything's going to be stemming back to this arm learning how to get itself from hand separation, that ball coming out of that glove, to it loading up to its 90-90. And at that 90-90, at this point in time, we need that foot to be in the ground. And right now, your foot's not quite in the ground, so we got to find a way not to be here quite yet. Because ultimately, like we saw with the big leaguers, at that moment of foot strike, we need to be drawing that line through our upper body. Yours is already kind of tilting forward a little bit. Do it there. We need to be, like we saw those big leaguers, their chest is out through here somewhere at the moment of them releasing that ball, using all of that power to send the throw down. We do something similar for you, and the ball's out of your hand right here, and we've only been able to go down that much. So being able to get our body to accelerate the throw is going to be a lot easier to achieve if we're making that throw from a better loaded position.